Good evening. I'd like us to open our meeting tonight with the serenity prayer. If you'll join me.
God, grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for a day.
My name's Paige Wood. My sobriety birthday is March the 31st, 1989. And I'm a member of this home group, the King Believe group, right now. I want to welcome everybody to be here tonight. A special occasion where we're going to recognize some sobriety birthdays. We got a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous going to share his story with us, and this special holiday. This is pretty unusual for this number of drunks to be together and sober in a church building.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for that. We've got a GSO open meeting statement, and it goes like this. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we are glad you're all here, especially newcomers. In keeping with our singleness of purpose and our third tradition, which states that the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. We ask all who participate confine their discussions to those problems with alcohol. We have an AA preamble which will tell us a little bit about what we are and what we're not. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is the desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. I've asked two of our home group members to help facilitate opening this meeting. I've asked Frank to read how it works, Rhonda to read our traditions in that order.
Good evening. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. My name is Frank. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is August 15, 2015, and I am a member of the Came to Believe group. How it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually, men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we begged you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power, that one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood it. 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order, I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make it clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. C, that God could and would if he were sought.
Thanks for reading.
Hello, my name's Rhonda Reed and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety birthday is May 15th, 2008, and I also am a member of this home group. The AA tradition. To those now in its fold, Alcoholics Anonymous has made the difference between misery and sobriety, and often the difference between life and death. AA can, of course, mean just as much to uncounted alcoholics not yet reached. Therefore, no society of men and women ever had a more urgent need for continuous effectiveness and permanent unity. We alcoholics see that we must work together and hang together, else most of us will finally die alone. The 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous are, we AAs believe, the best answers that our experience has yet given to those ever-urgent questions. How can AA best function? And how can AA best stay whole and survive? The 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. 3, the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4, each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5, each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6, an AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8, Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9, AA, as such, ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10, Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues. Hence, the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversies. 11, Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. 12. Anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities.
I don't know a whole lot about this, but I've got good instructions. So right now, I'm trying to get it set up, especially for our speaker, not so much for myself. Mary, have I got it?
That's better.
Well, how about now? Okay. Fantastic. Well, I'm going to put this protocol. Wow, this is in your face, isn't it? Anyway, tonight we're going to hear one member share his experience, strength, and hope, how he found his relationship with a new life through a design for living that we find in Alcoholics Anonymous. I can tell you a little bit about this man, and I think that all that you can say about any AA member to be a good member is that he's sober, that he's willing to help another alcoholic. This guy does it both in the free world and in the institutions. Has been doing it not just for a little bit. He's been doing it since he got here. He's been a sober buddy of ours for many years. We love him, and I hope that you'll give him a warm welcome. Dean. We call him Slow Walking Dean, and it did take a minute to get here.
My name is Dean Coley, and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is September 24th, 1997. My home group is the Principals Group of Raleigh. We meet twice a week. Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock we have a closed discussion meeting off of topics out of AA literature. Thursday nights we have an open speaker meeting at 8 o'clock. Several of y'all have been there and visited, and we always enjoy having y'all's company. Speaker meetings are my favorite meetings to go to. I've always loved just sitting back and listening to y'all's stories, and really that's what romanced me into AA more than anything, is listening to y'all's stories. I would much rather prefer to be sitting out there with you guys. But I've learned through experience and being told that this is part of the deal to serve God. Up here, I get to deepen my relationship with God. I get to deepen my relationship with y'all. And I get a little tighter hold on this blessing that I've been given from Alcoholics Anonymous. This is probably one of the most nerve-wracking things you ever have to do in AA. I'd rather sit in a prison with somebody serving double life sentences, twice as big as I am, crying and snot flying out, and all the awkwardness of doing that than to do this here. That's how I feel about it. This is a tough job. I'm from Wendell. I've lived there my whole life. Drinking has always been a part of my life. Since I was a little kid, I've always drank, stole swallows off of beers and wine glasses from family and my family's friends being around. There's a picture of me at my grandma's house where I'd taken a beer and I'm sitting on the couch with my father, and I'm leaning away, turning the beer up, and he's leaning in, trying to take it from me. And I'm also a guy who had every reason in the world not to ever take a drink, as I've heard Paige say, because of what alcoholism was doing in my own home when my father was drinking. For some reason, I've just always been fascinated with it. I never connected the drinking, my father's drinking, to what was going on with him until after getting a little older. All I saw was all the good times everybody was having, and I just wanted, that's what I wanted. And my drinking started off under a bridge in a brown paper bag. So I didn't have that to disqualify me for not being an alcoholic. I got drunk for the first time at 12 years old, and it immediately changed my whole life. I knew that I was going to do that every chance that I got. And at this time, my father had quit drinking. And for me to get alcohol, there was this guy in town, we called him the Bicycle Man. And he would be at one of the 3 stores in town, which were close by to where I grew up. And if you could find him and buy him something to drink, he'll buy you whatever you want. And there was a bridge right by there. And he bought his in a brown paper bag, so that's how I would get mine. And I would go under that bridge and drink after school, and whenever I had a little bit of money or I just felt like I needed to take a drink, that's what I'd be doing. And before getting drunk, I was a good student, played sports, went to church every Wednesday and Sunday, did all those normal things, but I don't know what happened as a kid. I can't remember, but at some point in my childhood, I started noticing things weren't right in my home, and I started taking that stuff personal. I didn't know that my father was an alcoholic, that alcoholism was an illness. We didn't talk about what was going on there at home. My father was drinking and coming in and cussing everybody out. We just didn't talk about it. And that was the best way I could process it. I just took it personal. I thought it was about me. And I hated my life. I hated living in this. I couldn't understand it. And then I'd get drugged to church every Wednesday and Sunday and get a totally different message there. And it was confusing. I did grow up in a Baptist church, but it wasn't a send you to hell Baptist church. It was a good church where they taught you about God's love and how to have a relationship with God, and it all sounded real good to me. And I wanted that, but in my mind, I thought I'd have to become a missionary in Afghanistan, become a preacher to have this relationship with God. Nobody told me that. I just remember they had a missionary speaker one time at church. Talked about the missions that he had been on, and so in my mind thinks I'm going to have to be a missionary if I want to invite God in my life. And that scared me from doing that. Plus, a relationship with God requires a lot of work. You got to pray, you got to read the Bible, you got to be at church every Wednesday and Sunday. And I wasn't interested in all that. I found alcohol, and that worked a whole lot faster. And it changed everything about me that I didn't like about myself. It changed my situation at home, changed my whole attitude towards life. By the time I was 14 years old, it was an everyday thing for me. By the time I was 15, I was drinking a case of beer or a fifth of liquor a day. My father had started back drinking by this time, and he would get drunk and hide fists of liquor everywhere. I grew up working for my father, so I knew where he hid all his liquor at. And he'd get drunk. He'd start drinking 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, so by the time we were done with work, he'd pass out. And I could just go find one of these fists of liquor, and then I'm going to have a good time for the rest of the night. And he would never say anything, because my mom would always find this liquor and pour it out, too. So you don't want to admit that you had some liquor hidden and it's gone, and you got a wife that's pouring it out. And so I never got in trouble for that. By the age of 16, in my first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting as a result of a DWI, and I was sitting in this room. It's typical story when you hear a young person going to Alcoholics Anonymous, a bunch of old people in there. And, you know, the only thing I remember from that meeting was, of course, the old people that were smoking and cussing in a church. I've never seen that before. And at the end of the meeting, some old man cussed everybody out. That was my introduction to Alcoholics Anonymous. And for that reason, I really appreciate groups like my home group and Came to Believe home group. People say a lot of stuff about our groups, how they're strict and things like that, but it's really important for a good message of Alcoholics Anonymous to come across in our meetings, because you never know, there could be a 16-year-old kid in there that needs to hear that. And I definitely did not hear that at my first time. I barely graduated high school. The only reason I got through high school because I knew if I quit, my dad would make me work for him full time. I had a lot of customers at school. I worked in the substance abuse field, but I wasn't counseling anybody. I was working the opposite end of it. And that's where all the girls were. That's where you found out where all the parties were. So from 7th grade to 12th grade, I cheated my way through school. And it's funny how you put forth all that effort into cheating. And then when it comes time to take the test, you know, you write this real tiny cheat sheet out. You already know all the answers. So you put forth all that effort to cheat. It's like I was actually doing the work. Not how they wanted it done. I never really liked school. I found it difficult to sit there and listen and pay attention. My mind was always somewhere else. Math was the only subject that I liked in school. And I guess my father knew that. That's why he worked me so hard growing up in his business. He was a house painter. And he grew up having to work hard, so he believed, like Jim Holmes always said, his father believed key to success is hard work. And so every time I had a weekend or a holiday off from school, that's where I was working with him. And I had a lot of resentment towards him over that, but I'm grateful for it today because I needed that lesson. And it's paid off after getting sober. It's paid off in my life, being raised that way. But I certainly hated him for growing up. Age of 20 years old, I'm working for my father, and thinking I'm starting to make big plans, moving out, saving up money. We work 7 days a week all the time, and that's pretty much, if there is a turning point in my drinking, I mean, it could have been drinking under that bridge at 12 years old, I don't know, but this is where things started going downhill for me, and I really can't remember all the stuff except for I had to go to court a lot. Stayed in a lot of trouble with everybody. Got another DWI at 20 years old, and as a result of that, it just set off like a chain of events in my life. And one of these chains of events ended me up in an intensive outpatient program. And they expect you to stay sober through the duration of this program. And I couldn't do it. And I really wasn't trying to do it. I was trying to sneak around their drug test and all that stuff. I wasn't doing a good job. And what happened to me was I had an intervention done on me. It wasn't one of them real loving interventions like I see on television where everybody's saying, I love you, I wish you wouldn't do this. Look at what you're doing to your family. It was my probation officer and this outpatient lady giving me the ultimatum to either go to prison or go to inpatient treatment. And that's how I got in my first treatment center. It seemed like a whole lot better deal than prison. And it was the ATC in Raleigh. And I remember I was in detox for 4 days sleeping, and I remember the 5th day they got me out to the classes they make you go to, and it wasn't a few days before I started seeing the truth about myself of what they were trying to teach me in there. And up until that point, the only thing that I could, and this is only to myself, I've only ever said this up here speaking to the guys I work with, because the thinking is so delusional that it's hard to admit it. I thought the way my life, reason my life was the way it was, all this trouble I'm in, because I broke a mirror at the age of 14 by accident. You know, I couldn't explain it any other way. All those times, teachers, probation officers, principals, assistant principals, lawyers, parents, people asked me, why do you keep doing this? And my only answer was the shoulder shrug. I don't know. There really was no answer. I did not know. And I wasn't about to admit the mirror thing. So I knew that was more questionable, but that's the only answer I had. It certainly wasn't my drinking and the choices I was making. I was sitting in that treatment center waiting for one of the classes to start, telling this guy my sad story about how everybody's telling on me, all this stuff, and right in the middle of explaining all this to this guy, it just came flooding in on me that the reason I'm sitting in here is because of my drinking and all the other stuff I was doing, and I just shut up. I didn't say another word. He didn't, continue looking at me like, are you going to finish the story? I just shut up and sat there with that reality, and it was hard to take, and at the same time it was a relief. I've been wondering these years just why do I keep doing this stupid stuff and finding myself in these places. And I got kicked out of that treatment center. Smoking marijuana wasn't a part of their treatment program. I just happened to get my hands on some on family day. Somebody smelled it on them and told them, just like, all the other times. And I conveniently made it to another treatment center before going to see my probation officer for my next appointment. And in that month's period of time, it's very true, it's hard to drink with a mind full of AA and a belly full of liquor. Because, you can't drink enough to drink away the fact that you're the problem, you're the cause of all this stuff. And I went into that second treatment center wanting to stay sober. I knew I needed to get away to do it. And I went in there and I did everything they told me to do to the best of my ability. Went through the first 5 steps in there. Really didn't know what I was doing. They just give you some books and a worksheet and you got to figure it out. So I just wrote a story about how everybody had done me wrong. The guy that came to hear my 5th step, pretty much he came after work and slept, kept falling asleep on me. When I get to the good stuff, he'd come around for that. And it was over and it was like, is this it? And I believed in God. I've always believed in God. God just seemed like too much work, and the alcohol was so much faster. And I got out of that treatment center and I did what they told me to do. I went to a meeting. And on my 5th day out, I had all intentions on going to a meeting, but I wanted to go see some of my friends and show them how good I was doing. Tell them all about recovery. And within 30 minutes of sitting in there, I found myself doing what they were doing, sitting in the same place I always sat, telling the same lies I always told. But now I'm not only lying to them, I'm lying to myself now, because I know what's going on. I realize I just relapsed. Might as well make it a good one. And if anybody's new, if you're wondering what your friends are doing, I went and checked on them for you. They're doing the exact same thing they was doing the last time you seen them. These relapses went on for another year and a half. During that year and a half period of time, I came to meetings, I picked up y'all's white chips. I hated coming here. Didn't like y'all. But I didn't know what else to do. I came to get my parents off my back because I knew they were watching every move that I made. Just kind of buying time, hoping sobriety would land on me. And I started back going to church. I'd sit in there beside Grandma, and they'd play them songs like Just As I Am, trying to get you to come down that aisle at the end. And I wanted to go, but I would just sit in there and dressed up like this, sweating. It was several years. I was several years sober before I could put on a suit and not sweat. I don't know if it was a subconscious thing about going to court or what. I just couldn't give myself to this. I couldn't give myself to Alcoholics Anonymous. I watched y'all, well, the meetings, I wasn't watching y'all. The meetings I was going to, I was watching those people, and all it looked like they were doing is coming and sitting in there, drinking coffee, eating cookies, and quoting those slogans, and all these little funny quotes you hear in Alcoholics Anonymous. And they would just repeat that stuff over and over. And as Steve knows, gratitude meeting, my least favorite meeting in the world, because nobody never had a topic, and they would say, well, if nobody's got a topic, we'll talk about gratitude. It seemed like every meeting was on gratitude. And I just couldn't figure it out. And since being sober, I've learned a lot about myself and a lot about how my mind thinks. And I'm the type of guy that you give me a bunch of materials and say, build this stage, show me a picture of it, I can figure it out, no problem. And that's how my mind works, and that's how I approach God, and that's how I approach Alcoholics Anonymous. And I couldn't figure it out. And I kept drinking, and I didn't want to drink, but I kept drinking. And what happened to me, my Bill Wilson experience was blue lights. I wasn't on that mountaintop or nothing. It was Wake County, the back of the Wake County Sheriff's car. And this was after my probation officer just gave me 2 new court dates for felony probation violations. And I mean, it should have locked me up right then, but the only reason he didn't is because I always had a job. I always paid him this little $25 or whatever it was. And I always showed up on time. And that's the only reason I think he didn't lock me up right then. And I sat at home all weekend trying to figure my way out of this one. And I knew that I had court that next week. I knew that my track record and showing up to court wasn't very good. I'd show up in the shape and frame of mind that nobody should be in public in. I would show up late. I knew they had that second roll call. If you make it there by the second roll call, you're good. And I was scared I was going to do something like that, so I tried to stay sober all weekend. I was watching the race that Sunday, and nothing goes better than with watching the race than cold beer. And I talked myself into having one of them cold beers, and I went to that same store where I grew up getting the Bicycle Man to buy me beer and wine from as a kid. Got me a beer, came back home. That was my plan. Sit here and drink this one beer. Next thing I remember, it was 2 o'clock Monday morning, I'm getting arrested again. And that was the blue light experience. And sitting in the back of that sheriff's car, this is why it's my blue light experience. This is why it's different from all the other times. Is that this time, I finally knew that this is all I had to look forward to for the rest of my life. I tried everything I could on my own power. I tried my daddy's program of staying sober, working 7 days a week. Put all your money in the bank. Only problem was, before the bank closed on Friday, I'd be back there getting it all back out. My mind would just change that quick. And I tried getting saved. This guy that worked for us, that took me to AA meetings that I sold pot to. Said, my church is having a revival, and I'd like to invite you to come. And I was like, sure, anything. And I got at this revival with him, and it was probably only maybe 300 people in that church. That's about how much it'll hold. But it felt like 1,000 people in there. And it was one of those evangelists. This is the first time I'd ever heard this phrase. All heads bowed, all eyes closed, type deal. I'm here to let you know, if you're not planning on changing your life, it's a trick. So what happened to me was, this guy said this. He said he's going to pray a prayer. I want you to pray along with him if you want to invite Christ in your life. I was like, that's something I need to do. Nothing else is working. And I'm thinking, well, and I know probably half the people in here, half the people in that church know my family. So everybody's got their eyes back, eyes closed and heads bowed. Nobody's going to see me raise my hand. Well, I didn't know that microphones, I can be here talking in this microphone, but I could take this out and walk over there where William is, and you'll think I'm still up here on this stage. When I opened my eyes after that evangelist got done praying, he was standing right in front of me. I must have been the only sucker that raised his hand. And, some weird white man took me into this back little room and did this praying and read out of the Bible, and it sounded good. And I wanted it just as bad as I want it right now. But I'm an alcoholic. I've got the type of mind that no matter how bad I don't want to drink, no matter what the consequences are, I've got a mind that's going to convince me that it's okay to drink. You're going to get away with it. You deserve a drink. Nobody's going to know. And that's what happened. Just a few days later, I'm drinking again. But sitting in the back of that sheriff's car, I knew that none of this stuff was going to work for me. And I knew that I had done everything that y'all are telling me to do here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I made a deal with myself sitting in the back of the sheriff's car that if I make it out to AA, I'm going to come here and I'm going to do everything y'all been telling me to do. Everything. I'm going to get sponsored, home group, everything. And I'd been to enough meetings. I knew AA was in prison, so I knew that eventually I could find myself in an AA meeting. And I called my mom just like I always did when I got arrested. And, but this time, she answered the phone. I told her that I was gotten arrested again and I was okay. And I hung up the phone in her face. I felt like my only hope of staying sober was to go to prison. But my good old sister comes and bails me out about 24 hours later. And even after all that, I did just what I always done when I got out of jail. She had me a big hog leg roll. I smoked and I made her stop at the convenience store because you need a cold beer to wash that thing down. And I took whatever pills she had on, every one of them. And I started my next week of court dates. And that Wednesday, back up, my last drink was that Tuesday. On the way home from court, my sister had to take off work and carry me because I had a habit of getting missing, especially when important things were happening like that I was supposed to be at. And she had to take off work to carry me to court. And I got her to stop at a convenience store, got me a cold beer, and I drank half of it. And I threw the other half out the window. I remember thinking to myself, I just can't take this anymore. And that was it. Just the consequences were just snowballing too fast, too hard. And I made that deal with myself in the back of the sheriff's car. I was going to come back and do everything y'all were telling me to do. And I wanted to see that thing through. The other side of that deal was I was going to do everything y'all were telling me to do. And if it doesn't work, then I could go on with this life and I can accept whatever comes. Prison, courts, my parents disown me, whatever. It didn't matter anymore. Because I would know that this is the life that I was destined to live. And that Wednesday night, I got on my knees and I prayed and I asked God to put somebody there at that meeting. It was this old man that was friends with my grandma that also went to our church. And he was a lot easier to take than a lot of the other people there. And I asked God to put that man there, and I was going to ask him for some help. But God had other plans that I wasn't aware of. He wasn't there that night, but this guy Freddie, several people in this room know. Freddie, I always like to say that he was my Ebby Thatcher. And he's the one that introduced me to the men that I look up to in this program today. And these men are here in this room. And I walked up to Freddie, told him what was going on. I told him I needed some help. And he said, well, I'm just getting sober myself again. And this was 25 years ago. And poor fella's still on the same road. Bless his heart. But he said, but I know who can help you. And he brought me to the principal's group of Wilson. And just sitting in that meeting, it was a meeting just like this one, because this meeting was born out of that meeting. And I've been to this meeting a lot over the years, and I know that this meeting is just like that one, because I know the people here. It was totally different from the meetings that I've been going to. They would share a meeting on a country song that they heard on the radio. And it didn't matter. And of course the gratitude meetings that I told you about. In this meeting, after going several times, they were talking about sponsorship. They were talking about home group. They were talking about the steps. Not just the steps, all the steps, by the numbers, by the individual step, talking about their experiences with it. And it's, the best way I can describe it is like standing outside the liquor store, waiting for the ABC guy to turn the lock on that door so you can go in there and get some liquor. That feeling, that of relief, and that's what I experienced when I got to the meetings like this. And I found my sponsor out of that group, Chuck, sitting back there tonight. When I got sober, all I wore was overalls. As Paige liked to say, I was an unemployed house painter. Guy cheated his way through school, and I asked a lawyer that wears clothes like this. These are casual for him. And graduated from Ivy League colleges and all this stuff. But God again knew what He was doing. As I've grown to know Chuck over the years, we have a lot of the same personality traits. You'll never know it just knowing Chuck in general, but he's got a pretty twisted mind. and I can identify with that. And we started with the steps, and my first time through them, I just wanted to get the fire put out. I rushed through them. He said, let's read this, let's meet next week. I'd read it, and then we read it together. You know, I did everything he said, except for on the fourth step. He gave me 2 weeks to do it. I waited till the second week. Right? I always waited till the last minute to do things. But when I finally sat down to do it, my hardest resentment that I had my whole life was a resentment against my father. And it just ate my lunch every time, and every day, because I had to work with him also. And as soon as I sat down and started writing about him, of course he was the first person that I read about, that resentment just melted away. And I could see that he was a man just doing the best that he could. He was also an alcoholic. And I knew that I got a far better deal than he did growing up from him. Just all these realizations came to me, and I was able to forgive him. And he had a way of bringing that resentment back up in me on a daily basis. And I found that very hard to get through in the beginning, but as I started learning about these steps and trying to practice them in my life, I was able to start work through that stuff in my mind and know that it wasn't me, it wasn't my fault. You know, and it got to the point where he could just be blowing up right in front of me. And in my mind, I'm just standing there like smiling at him. But you dare not show him that smile, or it will get worse. You know, his and our relationship changed to the point, I was around 4 or 5 years sober. We had this guy working for us, and he told me one day, he said, I wish me and my father could have the same relationship as you and your dad do. Wow. And it wasn't nothing my father had done. It wasn't a whole lot I'd done on my part, except for come here, hang out with y'all, learn how to treat other people, and try to carry this message. And solely, I really believe that the biggest change in my personality, my attitude towards life, has came through working with other alcoholics. I was 23 years old when I got sober. It was hard to get people to sponsor, but I went to the treatment centers. I went everywhere I could. And I got this one guy at the halfway house and got him all the way through the steps. And instead of going out working with other alcoholics, he went and got a stripper girlfriend. And he relapsed on me. And shortly after that, you know, I watch y'all. If you hang out in a lot of places like I did, you learn how to watch people. And you know when something's about to blow up or go sideways. And I watch y'all the same way I watch them people in the bars and in them houses I hung out with. And I wanted to be like y'all were. I wanted to go into prisons, not because I caught a break and didn't have to go. It's because I wanted to be the type of man that I was fighting. And my first opportunity to do that, I was probably 6 months off of probation, but it worked out where I could get in. And I remember it was the Inside Freedom group where Dwight got sober at his Christmas party that night. And Keith Lewis was the speaker. Steve was there, and I got to meet all the guys and then began volunteering there afterwards. It was a big experience, man. I've always enjoyed listening to Keith Lewis. He's been a big inspiration in my way of thinking and following him, as well as Steve and Jerry and Paige and Chuck, and trying to do all the things and be like you guys. And I didn't know what I was doing going in that prison. It wasn't really intimidating because I've hung out with people like that my whole life. I was a convict, but I just had never been in prison. And my mind think that way. I approach life the same way they do. I felt inside the same way they did. And I immediately started making friends with these guys, and that's truly the biggest thing that's changed my life in this program, was getting involved in those men's lives, men that I still have relationships with today. And I'm getting short on time. Unfortunately, Paige didn't use up a lot of my time like he normally does. My wife asked me, why do they only have one speaker meeting? What do they do the rest of the night, say meet? I said, don't worry, Paige will spend 20 minutes telling you what they do. Caught a break from that tonight. I got a little extra time, I appreciate it. Young Steele, that unemployed house painter. I run my own business today. My father gave this business over to me in 2008 when there wasn't any work to do anyway. For like the next 4 years, I just scraped by, but I'm grateful to being handed a business during a time like that. It taught me a lot of lessons in life about managing money and handing my finances over to God. My father passed away several years ago. When he passed away, nothing else needed to be said between he and I. A little over a year ago, I was pretty much like giving up on dating. It was just wasn't working out. My wife and I had dated off and on for a few years, but she had her own business as well, and me with my own business. We worked a lot. You're like 40-some years old and work 6-7 days a week. When it comes time, would you like to go out on a date tonight? Not really. I'd but we began getting closer, and things got serious, and we dated for a year. The more I got to know her, it's just like when that night that I needed some help, and I went to Alcoholics Anonymous to ask for help. God put the right person that I needed there when I needed him. And he's done that all throughout my sobriety. And he did the same with my wife. She's got the same personality as I do. She would make a great member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been trying to get her a drink. I don't want to see what happens. But she's fit right in with us, and we get along great. I don't know why I waited so long to get married. It's really been a wonderful experience. But I really believe why it's taking this long for me to get married is it took God and y'all this long for me to be able to be the type of man to reciprocate that back to her. And going back to church has always been a big part of my sobriety. And I don't talk about it a lot because it's AA, you know. But whenever I get up here and when I know that I would be lying if I didn't say something about it. It's been a big part of my sobriety as well. It challenges me to be a lot better person, a lot more than what I normally hear in Alcoholics Anonymous. And it has helped me to become the type of man that I've always wanted to be. And I'm sure my family's always wanted me to turn out to be like. And I want to thank y'all for asking me up here to speak tonight. And thank y'all for helping me become that man.